Yeah, here's a quick video on the Excel homework. I downloaded the Excel sheet from Cengage. The first thing I did was I took the original sheet, I copied that, and I pasted it into another sheet so then I can make some edits. I'm going to make the edits right to the side. I can do different things. The original sheet was protected cells. So we want to find out what's the dividend in the first year. So I'm going to say equals the dividend today that was just paid times 1 plus the supernormal growth rate. So that's going to be the dividend in the first year. And then the dividend in the second year would be the previous dividend times 1 plus the super growth rate. Close it. Then we got the dividend for the second year. All right, next we want to do is find out what the horizon value at the end of the second year. So what's going on here is we got 2 years of super growth. And then we have at the second year, after that second payment is made, this is after the first year, second year. So at the second year, if you bought the stock, we have a perpetuity of 6% forever. So I want to figure out if you bought the stock in the second year, how much would that be worth? You'll get 6%. So you get 20 if you bought it today, you get paid the first year, and then you get 20 for the first year, get paid the second year. But if you bought it the second year, you get 6%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out the perpetuity, which is first thing I want to do is I want to find out what the dividend will be in that third year. So I'm going to take the second year dividend and multiply it 1 plus the normal growth rate now. Right, 275. So that is going to be the dividend in the third year. But that's going to be forever. Okay, that's the third year. So what I want to find out, what is the stock worth if you bought it in year 2? So what I'm going to do is if I bought it in year 2, the price of the stock would be the dividend in year 3. So remember, the price is always the next dividend divided by the required rate of return, 10%, minus the growth rate. So what that's going to tell me is if you buy the stock in the third year, I'm sorry, in the second year, that stock is worth 68.69 because that is a continuous dividend or a perpetuity of 6% forever. First 2 years of two different interest rate or growth rates. So we want to figure out what those are. Then we want to find out the perpetuity is 6%. So that's what that's worth. All right, now what I want to do is I want to convert all of these into the present. Okay, so I'm going to do it way over here. So I'm just going to convert the first year. That's paid out in the first year. So I'm going to divide that by 1 plus the required rate of return. $1.96. So if I get paid $2.16 a year from now, that's worth $1.96 today. And then what I'm going to do is this is 2 years from now, this dividend will be paid. So I'm going to divide that by 1 plus the 10%. Now that's 2 years from now. So I'm going to have to do it to the second power. It'll be $2.14. And then starting in the second year, we got a perpetuity of 6% forever. So then I have to convert that 68. So if I get paid a perpetuity of 6% forever, that's worth 68.69. If I bought the stock in the second year, I need to convert that into the present. So I'm going to say equals this price divided by 1 plus the required return. And I'm going to do that to the second power because that stock is worth 2 years from now because that's when the perpetuity starts. We have two dividends. So we discount the second dividend, and the perpetuity to the second power for both. So the first dividend, the second dividend, and then the perpetuity, that's the present value these are worth. So what I'm going to find out is the stock price is going to be equal to the sum of all future cash flows, which are these. This is the present value of all future cash flows. So the stock price would be $60.87. And then if I want to find out the dividend yield, what I do is I take the first, we're trying to find the dividend in the first year. So I take the dividend in the first year, and then I divide it by what is this stock price? What is this initial investment? What's costing me? I paid $60.87 for the stock, and I got paid $2.16 dividend. So $3.55. I'm sorry, 3.55%. Okay. This is based on a capital required return of 10%. So now I'm trying to find the capital gains. The easy way to do it is just take the 10%, because that's what our total gain would be. The 10% should equal the dividend yield and the capital gains yield. So if I subtract out the dividend yield, that will give me the capital gains yield. So the dividend yield plus the capital gains will equal 10%. Okay, the same thing you do with this, so I can do this just really quick, is now what if it went on for 5 years? So if it went on for 5 years, what we do is, I'm gonna go back up. I could do this all over again. We take the dividend that was paid out today. And what I want to do is I want to make this go pretty quick. A couple ways now. Okay, let's just do it this way. So we'll take that dividend and we'll multiply it times 1 plus the supernormal growth. So that's the dividend in the, oh, what did I do wrong here? I have the wrong cell selected. I want that supernormal growth right there. Okay, $2.16. So if I want to do the next one, I'll take this one and I'll multiply 1 plus, I'm just going to type in 0.20. Same thing we did, right? And then I'm going to drag this down, and that should solve all 5 years, just to make sure I did it correctly. Yep, did the previous times 1 point. Yep, so did the previous, and you multiply it times 1 plus 0.2, which is a 20% gain. So we see the dividends of each year. Now we want to find out in the 5th year, that's when the perpetuity starts at 6%. So I want to find out what that price is. So what I'm going to do is, because it doesn't really give me a lot of cells, it's a little different than the solution Excel sheet. So I'm going to find out what is that worth. I'm going to say equals. I'm sorry. What I want to do is I want to find out what the dividend payout in the 6th year is. And that's how to find the price in the 5th year. So the 6th year would be the 5th year multiplied times 1 plus the normal growth rate now. So that's the dividend paid out in the 6th year. And that'll be a perpetuity. And the perpetuity starts in the 5th year. So what we want to do is to find out what is that value worth in the 5th year. So in other words, if I bought the stock in year 5, what is it worth? So 5 years from now, it'd be equal to the dividend in the 6th year divided by the required return minus the growth rate of the dividend. It's supposed to go up by 6% per year. So in the 5th year, if you bought it 5 years from now, the stock's worth $118.69. If you can get a growth rate of 6% and my cost of capital is 10%. Okay, now what we want to do is find out what is the stock price worth. These are all future cash flows. Future cash flows, we need to convert it for today. So, or to the present value, I'm going to say equals. I'm gonna take the dividend in the first year. I'm gonna divide that by, we're discounting 1.0. I'm sorry, 1. And then this will be an easy way to do it. I'm going to do to the power of that 1 right there. So that's going to convert it to $1.96. I can scroll down for all 5 of these cash flows. And just to make sure I did it correctly, I'll select it. And it did that cash flow divided by 1.1, our required return, to the 5th power. Last thing I want to do is convert the perpetuity that starts in the 5th year. And I'm going to say equals. I take that perpetuity and I'm going to divide it by 1.1. And I'm going to say to the 5th power. That starts in the 5th year. So to find out the stock price, all I do is sum up all cash flows are in the present. That should be the stock price. To find the dividend, I'm going to say equals. I got to see what is that dividend in the first year. We want to find out what the dividend yield in the first year is. Take the dividend in the first year and divide it by your investment. And as you can see, the actual dividend yield went down is because the stock price went up in value. The dividend did not change. That first year is still 20% gain. So it's still $2.16. Since the stock price is higher, the dividend yield went down. And then I'm going to say equals 10% minus this. The difference between those two would be the capital gains. Okay, when we do something like this, what you want to do with this question is we're looking at the valuation through cash flows rather than dividends. This is a different way to look at it. What we want to do is we want to figure out these are all the cash flows. I want to convert, goes from year 1 through 10. I want to convert all those into the present. So we're going to do a very similar approach. So I'm going to take that cash flow received next year. I'm going to divide it by 1. I got to read the question. You know what? I don't have, here it is. Okay, just to explain one thing real quick. A required return on our dividend was 10%. This is a different required return. It's called WACC, which is weighted average cost of capital. This is what the firm discounts their future cash flows by. This is what on average it costs them through debt and equity. So we're going to discount it through the 9%. Okay, so I'm going to do 1 plus the 9%. I'm going to drag that down. I'm dragging it by the number. I'm going to put a $sign in front of it. And then I'm going to do it to the power of that year. Let's do it right there. So 5.4 million is really worth 4.95 million today. If I drag that down for all 10 years, it will give me my present value of the future cash flows. Okay. And then this question, I don't have the question here, but I know this question because I've done the question a couple of times. The growth rate after the 10th year is now 6%. So for me to find out how much I receive in the 11th year, all I do is take the previous year. Oh, maybe I should do it over here. I'm going to take the previous year and I'm going to multiply it times 1 plus the growth rate. This is what we expect. This is a perpetuity in a way. We believe that our sales are going to increase by 6% forever. I'm only going to find that next year, the 11th year. So let me mark that. Let's see, 11th. And then I want to discount that. So what this means is in the 10th year, if you bought the stock that we believe from that sale, we'll get a 6%. So it's very similar to what we just did. We're going to take a price if you bought it in the 10th year. Price is that cash flow in the 11th year. So it's very similar. And I'm going to divide it by the cost to capital minus the growth rate. So it's very similar. So I discounted all cash flows from 1 to 10. And then starting in year 10, we get a 6% growth forever. The only thing I did a little, so I told you that's what it's worth, those cash flows in the 10th year. I did not this, I solved a perpetuity. I still got to discount it. So I'm going to take this. That's what we just solved. That's what it's worth in the 10th year. And I'm going to divide it by 1 plus that cost or that whack. And I'm going to do it to the, because that's when it starts in the 10th year, to the 10th power. So at $5,702, that's what's worth. And we get a 6% growth forever is worth today, 2,400. It's a little different than how I was solving on the other one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate. I'm just going to do it over here. And I think when you read the question, it'll make sense. I'm going to sum up all the present value cash flows 1 through 10. And then also that next one. That's what I have there. And then what it's going to do is going to ask market value of operations. I believe it's 0 in this example. I don't have the question. What about debt? So pretty much what we're going to do is you're going to do a lot of adding, but there's no adding because there's no non-market or operation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that amount and I'm going to subtract out the debt. That's going to give me a different value there. So that's the cash flows of all future cash flows with the perpetuity of a 6% growth, what it's worth today, minus the debt. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that value and I'm going to divide it by the 20 million outstanding shares. And that just gave me a $1.0964. So I see how it's going. I kind of did a little different up here, but that's going to be the price per share. So what I want to do is I want to compare that. If I did it through the evaluation of the cash flows, that's going to be the value. If I do the dividend discount model, I'm going to go all the way up here. It's going to be worth 85.47. Okay. So the only thing I'm going to say is I didn't read the question. I'm just going off the Excel sheet. Just double check that there's market value of non-operating assets. All the questions I saw was 0. You have to add that in for the value of the equity of the firm. But that's what it's going to be, the price per share, how we value it. If we did the dividend discount model, it valued it at 80. Where's that value at? Stock price 85.47. So let me know if that helped. And again, I might be missing a couple data points. Let me know if you need me to clarify a little bit more. Thank you. I'll see you later.